Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 2 of Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro, Second Attack. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So, we're finally back to sort of general art club shenanigans, it seems like. You know, I feel like the last episode was kinda light on it, despite that ostensibly being Senpai's whole kind of deal, you know. I mean, sure, he's a student, but he lives for art. Oh no. Surely this can only go poorly. Yeah, that's a good way to aspirate something. Jeez, Nagatoro. So, you know, Senpai's not particularly feeling his art today. And it would seem as though the club president showing up might be rather fortuitous for him, you know. It's interesting that he's not feeling his art and that Nagatoro isn't around. You know, surely there can't be a connection there, but... You know... Okay, you know, I was gonna say the president's being kinda harsh, but she is taking into account the fact that he basically saved the club through the art festival by pumping out a whole bunch of high quality art. So, you know, if he's not feeling super artistic right now, it's only a natural response. Now, she's had the bright idea of, you know, maybe going to the zoo and drawing some of the animals there, because... You know, he normally just draws still life, you know, bowls of fruit on a table or potted plants or stuff like that, you know. Drawing an animal's a nice change of pace, and indeed, going to the zoo is, well, it's certainly interesting. Like, I mean, I'm not big on animals in general, you know, I like there to be a bit of distance between me and animals that might want to eat me, but, you know, seeing them doing their thing is pretty interesting nonetheless. So the president has decided that perhaps Senpai invite Nagatoro. And, oh dear, it seems like we're entering farce territory. President made perhaps a poor choice of words. But what I don't understand is why Nagatoro's instantly thinking of, you know, bodily emissions in relation to the zoo. You know, she sees those zoo tickets and naturally thinks, oh, Senpai's going to invite me, won't this be nice? But already there's sort of a mismatch in what each person believes the motive behind this is. You know, Senpai thinks, well, he needs to go draw still life, and the president says, invite Nagatoro with you. Nagatoro thinks, I guess, he's going to put the moves on her at the behest of the club president. And I guess, on its face, that seems a little strange. I don't know, I'm struggling to think of a situation where something like that would even be marginally appropriate, where somebody as, like, a coworker or an acquaintance sort of instructs you on your romantic life. That's absolutely absurd. So Nagatoro naturally seems very excited about going to the zoo, even if Senpai is trying to be, I guess, kind of surreptitious about the whole thing. It's like, okay, well, you like animals, but do you like drawing too? It's interesting that, for once, the shoe is kind of on the other foot, in that Nagatoro's flustered, because she really wants to go along with this. Oh, okay, that was just sort of a scenario being acted out in Senpai's mind. I mean, that would be a nice change of pace, in reality, if, Nagatoro were the one to be flustered and wanting to go along with whatever Senpai was, I guess, intending to do. I guess in reality, Senpai is flustered, but Nagatoro is sort of steering the conversation a little bit. So Nagatoro's acting like she doesn't really know about any of this, even though she did sort of overhear things. Granted, the reason why she's partially so flustered is because of her little misunderstanding. I mean, I guess maybe she wouldn't be making fun of him so much if she actually knew what was going on. But, well, she has her own ideas. And I think it is rather telling that, given what she thinks is going on, that she's so eager really speaks to how she actually feels about Senpai, Really makes you think, doesn't it? Really just activates both hemispheres of my brain. So it's very clear that Nagatoro is definitely treating this like more of a date than perhaps it was intended to be. Senpai, in his mind, this is going to be purely an artistic endeavor. Here's a sketchbook, we're going to be drawing. And if we're not drawing, why else would I have invited you? That's gotta be a bit of a realization, alright, where Nagatoro sort of grasps that, no, she's not here for what she thought. She's here to draw. And, I'd imagine the amount of preparation that goes into the two activities differs wildly. I mean, nonetheless, she seems to have had the good graces to go along with this, if only to look at all the cute animals. I mean, what's that right there? A red panda or something? When he's just sort of doing his thing, standing upright. Animals do funny things, and they do them quite frequently. At least Senpai has the right idea that, we're here to draw, so I'm drawing. Although in retrospect, I guess, Senpai needs to cop a little bit of the fault for this, for not saying, hey, we're gonna be here doing life drawing, Although I guess he can't really be blamed for not specifying that, Nagatoro, we're not going to the zoo for me to donate some fluid. You know, I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation to assume that that's, you know, pretty clear that they're not going to be doing that. So this is an interesting situation wherein Senpai is, you know, he's the one with all the talent here, he knows what he's doing. Nagatoro is kind of new to this whole deal, and you know what, I can certainly sympathize with her somewhat in that I draw like a 5-year-old, so, you know, if she's trying to draw an animal that won't sit still, I'd imagine that would be pretty frustrating if you want to get like a good sort of rendering of it. Nevertheless, she can't help herself, you know. She needs to sort of engage in that trope where, you know, like, I don't know, I've seen it in baseball and golf where, like, the guy sort of reaches behind the girl and guides her in swinging the bat or whatever. Nagatoro's trying to trick Senpai into doing that. It's like, come on, take my hand, show me how to draw. And, yeah, you know, that whole comment from before and her misunderstanding, that's living in her head rent-free if she's trying to initiate stuff like this. I guess to Senpai's credit, he is actually going along with it. You know, it is nice for there to be little bits of progress every now and again. Man, if only Senpai knew about the misunderstanding. You know, if he knew what Nagatoro thought was going to go on, you know, grabbing her hand to help her draw like this would be the least of his worries. You know, I guess Nagatoro kinda has to strike while the iron's hot, you know. Senpai's embarrassed about this whole thing, so she has to tease him. Yeah, you know, come to think of it, I don't know how effective doing something like this would actually be. At least in terms of drawing. Like, I feel like if you're trying to hit a baseball or hit a golf ball or something like that, there's less fine motor control involved than there is with sort of sketching something out. I mean, nevertheless, Senpai and Nagatoro produced a passable result together. You know, certainly better than something I could produce. So it really does seem like the two of them are having a good day, you know. They sketch a variety of animals, and although there is a certain disparity between the quality of their sketches, you know, it's not like what Nagatoro has produced is bad on a fundamental level. Or rather, I should say, it's not irredeemably bad, you know. It's indicative of somebody who's learning, but somebody who's starting to grasp the basics. And I do always find it interesting in anime, and just animation in general, where you sort of contrast stylized characters like what we have here with things that are supposed to be more realistic. Because, you know, surely wouldn't something realistic have a sort of similar art style to the characters themselves? It's just something that, I don't know. It doesn't really have an impact on anything, but I think about it. Man, so all in all, it really has been a good day for Senpai and Nagatoro. Now, it seems to me that there's a bit of a tonal shift here with the entrance of these two characters. And interestingly, they don't really have eyes. Surely they do, but it seems like this is sort of that trope where it's like background characters who don't really matter don't have eyes. Or you know what? Maybe this is a function of what Senpai's saying right there. Like, he doesn't remember people's faces very easily. So he doesn't remember their faces, therefore they're sort of like these blank-faced mannequins almost. I mean, they certainly seem to be people he wouldn't want to associate with, hence why they sort of immediately pick up the sketchbooks and start criticizing the art. I mean, that's kind of a rude thing to do. I mean, I guess it's only natural that they find a lot more fault in Nagatoro's art, and therefore they start, picking on it, calling it juvenile and of poor quality, and, be that as it may, it's interesting that Senpai's actually not taking this, whereas, if they were picking on his art, he would have just sort of waited for them to go away. I'm thinking this is a real turning point here, or an inflection point, rather. Senpai has grown like the first little segment of a spine, whereby if he's not willing to stand up for himself, he's willing to stand up for somebody else. Fortunately, he doesn't have to do too much on his own. Nagatoro's here, and even if she's not necessarily insisted on defending her own art, she's certainly not going to take crap from somebody who's picking on Senpai. Alright, so these two are familiar with Nagatoro, and they're definitely more deferential to her. I mean, Nagatoro's not exactly an imposing figure, so I don't know why they'd be acting so afraid, but, it's nice that they're sort of backing down publicly. I'm wondering if there's sort of something else going on here, if Nagatoro has some sort of like ace up her sleeve to provoke this sort of a reaction in other people. I mean, whether there is something or not, she's basically strong-armed some praise and compliments out of them for both her art and Senpai's art. Well, there we have it. It's also kind of an interesting side of Nagatoro that we see from time to time where, yeah, she picks on Senpai, yeah, she picks on him a lot, but, that's her remit, other people can't do that, she can do that. And therefore, if there are other people picking on her, then, it's almost like they have a common enemy, and, the teasing can resume later once the common enemy's out of the way. But of course, there's a little bit more to it than just that. Nagatoro saw that first little bit of Senpai's spine poking through, and therefore, you have to reward good behavior. So based on the way they're talking, it seems like they've spent the whole day here at the zoo. And just to tie a big bow on the day, they need to, well, they don't need to. They're going to go sketch Nagatoro's favorite animal, just to make sure their trip to the zoo was both productive and memorable. And she's playing kind of coy here, like, oh, I don't really have a favorite animal, so let's just draw this sloth here. And frankly, sloths are pretty, well, they're not my favorite animal, I'll put it that way. And I don't think you could, get much out of drawing them. I mean, maybe Nagatoro's thinking, like, a sloth doesn't move around too much, so I can sort of leverage that with my meager artistic abilities to produce a good sketch, but... So it's interesting that she's so into the art, but at the same time, you know, she wants senpai focused as well. Okay, I think I know where she's going with this, you know. If she was so insistent that senpai keep his eyes facing forward and that she's being coy about what she drew, you know, it's only natural. You know, she had another artistic target in mind. And on the one hand, you know, she's talking about him like he's an animal, and a particularly unimpressive animal at that. But on the other hand, you know, this is probably the best sketch she's produced thus far, and even if there is a bit of mocking derision, I mean, there's gotta be something to being the object of one's artistic ambitions. You know, I feel like Nagatoro's maybe taking it a bit too far, implying that he has ulterior motives looking at a drawing of himself. But, you know, I guess she has to tease him after doing something so, I guess, sort of kind. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.